Overnight, President Biden gave his first interview since the Russian counterattack on Ukrainian cities.
The president giving his assessment of whether Vladimir Putin might use a nuclear weapon. Our senior White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, has more for us. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Robin. Well, as Putin ramps up his brutal bombing of Ukrainian cities, President Biden overnight saying he thinks that the Russian president is a, quote, rational actor, but saying he is one who greatly miscalculated Russia's military strength and the fight of the Ukrainian people. But despite Russia's desperation now, Biden says he does not think Putin will ultimately use.
Wait, what is this? You trying to hoop with Dio and the boys?
We finna hoop out, nigga. I'm finna do a lockout in the gym, and I tweet the address too, nigga. It's like that. That nigga play for Gonzaga. We not playing no games. I'm getting Bronny on the team. I'm getting Rob Dillingham on the team.
I don't think he's talking about me.
Dusty Stromer is on the team. Nick in the cut gonna fuck around and get Jared. Who else? We need a center. We really don't even need no center for y'all weak ass niggas. Anybody who wanna play. Shit.
I don't think he's talking about me, dude. You don't need Bronny to fucking play against me. Like, zombie center? Yeah, dude. I'm gonna be center when LeBron James's son, who is much more athletic, much taller, much better at basketball. Like, when you bring in like actual people who fucking play basketball, like varsity, when you play college. You're talking about people who play college? Wait, how tall is Bronny? He's 6'2"? Wait, how? No shot. He's 6'2"? That's crazy. I mean, he can still probably cook me, but... Wait, how old is he? He's 18, bro. He's 6'2". He's 18. He's going to keep growing. Yeah, he's 18. People don't grow after 18. I grew after 18. You're wrong. Anyway, look at his brother Bryce. His younger brother Bryce is even bigger. I think he's closer to 6'4", but his younger brother looks like he's the one who's got the height. That's kind of wild. If you're LeBron James's son and you're only 6'2" at the age of 18, like how tall was LeBron at the age of 18? I think LeBron already was like 6'6", right? But yeah, people who say like you grow, you're done growing at 18 are so fucking wrong. I grew in college. I went into college 6 foot and I came out like 6'4". So you're not right about that. And I wasn't 6 foot, but like I think I was like 6'1" or something. So you're fucking certainly wrong about that. I wrote a hard drive article about you, King. Twitch viewer watching XQC watch Misgifts apology stream. Twitch viewer watching XQC watch Hasan watch Misgifts apology stream confused for some reason. It just seemed like a little all over the place, said Howard, straining to watch the recording of Misgift stream embedded within Hasan stream, embedded within XQC stream. Misgift mentioned something about his lawyer saying something which was cut off by Hasan saying something about content demons which was cut off by XQC saying he was just watching his best friend's stream. Misgift's stream could have been much more organized in my opinion. Howard reportedly tried messing with his volume controls to try to amplify Misgift's audio without amplifying XQC's or Hasan's to no avail. Someone started playing Mario at one point and I couldn't tell whose screen it was on, he said. They make these streams hard enough to follow in the first place without all this extra stuff. Then someone gifted like 1,000 subs on one of the channels, no idea which, and alerts started going off like crazy. It's so hard to keep up with social media discourse these days. You know it's confusing when even a juicer like me can't follow along. Despite difficulties, Howard remains vigilant that streaming is just the best way to consume information. I've actually had an idea for a type of stream where it's just one piece of content playing the whole time and you just watch it, he explained. There's no other video stream along with it. It's just the content by itself. I know that sounds pretty boring, and even I wonder who the hell would want to watch that. But maybe it's worth trying. Until then, though, they should just dial these streams back just a little bit. That's a good one, Chatter. At press time, Howard was still attempting to clear up his confusion by watching a YouTube reactive, moist, critical summary of Miskif's Twitch apology. Quality. I love how much brain rot the person who wrote this must have. I mean, they're in the chat. They're literally in the chat, and they're like a 20-month. Yeah, I mean, here. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Hasan. My life is complete. They're a 13-month subscriber, the person who wrote this. Why would you think that they're normal in any meaningful capacity? Of course they're fucking brain rotted. This is hard drive, which is like the Onion for gaming. Anyway, I have the Dennis Prager clip. But getting back to the serious news, once again, I'm going to start it from the top. Brandon is talking about Biden and nukes. But what I'm talking about is the top of the hour ad break. Because at the top of the hour, there is a real nuclear threat in the form of content disruption. You no longer want to see those ads. All you need to do is subscribe, which you could do for $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, where you get one free Prime subscription a month. Okay, we're getting into it. Okay, here's the 1 minute ad break now. Okay, there it is. First name, last name, thank you for the 10. Barricade73, thank you for the 10, allowing 20 people to no longer see the ads. All right, I gave you the ad break. Let's get started.
The latest on the war in Ukraine. Overnight, President Biden gave his first interview since the Russian counterattack on Ukrainian cities.
The president giving his assessment of whether
Vladimir
Putin might use a nuclear weapon. Our senior White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, has more for us. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Robin. Well, as Putin ramps up his brutal bombing of Ukrainian cities, President Biden overnight saying he thinks that the Russian president is a, quote, rational actor, but saying he is one who greatly miscalculated Russia's military strength and the fight of the Ukrainian people. But despite Russia's desperation now, Biden says he does not think Putin will ultimately use a nuclear weapon. As Russia escalates its offensive and Putin continues to threaten a nuclear attack, President Biden overnight warning of the risks of this moment.
The miscalculation could occur. No one can be sure what would happen, and it could end in Armageddon.
Putin has said he isn't bluffing about the potential use of nuclear weapons, but Biden disagrees, saying despite Russia's setbacks on the battlefield in Ukraine, he doesn't think Putin will actually go that far.
I don't think he will, but I think it's irresponsible for him to talk about it. I think he is a rational actor who's miscalculated significantly.
In a CNN interview, the president asked if he had instructed the Pentagon to game out a nuclear scenario.
Biden, don't do it. No, he said, oh no, oh no.
I think he is a rational actor who's miscalculated significantly.
Oh no, dude, I fell into that trap. Mr. Biden, Mr. Brandon, please get down, sir. Mr. President, get down. You've fallen into the rookie hole. You said Putin is a rational actor. I've done that mistake. Will not repeat it again. I'll tell you what. Classic rookie hole mistake from Brandon, okay? He's in the rookie hole, dude. He said Putin is a rational actor.
In a CNN interview, the president asked if he had instructed the Pentagon to game out a nuclear scenario just in case.
The Pentagon didn't have to be asked.
The war in
If he's wrong, as they're being vaporized, the last moments of civilization will be ripping Biden a new one over how wrong he was. Yeah, they'll be like, you got owned, sir. Meanwhile, he's up on fucking Air Force One, okay? He's towering over the nuclear mushroom clouds as he reads Twitter. As he reads, people on Twitter being like, you got owned, sir. Remember when you said nukes weren't vaporized? As I'm vaporized, I'm tweeting. I'm sending hit tweets. One last time, dude. One last dance.
recent days escalating to new heights. Russia bombarding civilian targets and critical infrastructure across Ukraine for 3 straight days. Firing more than 100 missiles and dozens of drones, killing at least 19 people, some of the strikes captured in these videos circulating online. the United Nations condemning the attacks as particularly shocking. Biden Tuesday joining the G7.
Is it particularly shocking? I feel like it's not particularly shocking. As a matter of fact, it's unsurprising how brutal the Russian occupation and invasion has been. I mean, one, it's war, right? But two, it's not like they've been less unhinged in the past. You know what I mean? I would say it's the least shocking. Like, especially when it very much seems like Putin is like, I'm not gonna be, operating in good faith here. Obviously, if I feel like I'm getting owned super hard, I'm gonna throw out, in the words of Donald Trump, the N-bomb. Okay, and by that I mean nuclear. And also, if you strike targets that are outside of the eastern regions, especially if you're like striking out. Especially if you're striking like the Crimean Bridge, for example, a bridge of strategic and symbolic importance, he's like, yeah, I'm going to do the same back to you, but worse, because he's already doing the worst shit. Anyway, let's continue.
Leaders for an emergency meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky. The allied leaders are pledging to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes, but Zelensky's urging them to do more.
Щит для України.
Calling for more sanctions and air defense systems. The U.S. Tuesday sending 4 more longer-range missile systems, along with more advanced air defense systems from Germany. The big question now is, how does Putin get out of this? What is his off-ramp, as the president has said? Biden
is the number one strategic target for Ukraine and a 100% viable option to hit, saying it's civilian is complete bullshit. Yeah, I mean, the retaliation for a bridge that provides logistical support for the war in a limited capacity, but more importantly is also a civilian bridge, is Putin saying, well, we're striking the power grid. You know what I mean? Which is bullshit. Like, what Putin is doing is fucking complete bullshit. It's more brutal than what Ukraine did, and they're always going to do that. Like, they're always going to reply in an infinitely worse way. Specifically because like he already invaded Ukraine. That's it. That's like, you know what I mean? That already is like the worst thing you can do. It's just the U.S. always replies in a more brutal way too. It's our playbook. Yeah. And so that's where we're at now. They are the invading force. All of their actions are going to be violent. Exactly. Is there a revanchist war from the start, saying that it's an eye for an eye is the same take as Musk? I'm not even saying it's an eye for an eye. I'm describing what Vladimir Putin's take is on it, because it's not an eye for an eye. It's an eye for, like, taking your whole fucking skull off, okay? Like, his justification for targeting infrastructure is a silly one. Everyone understands what the purpose of Putin's Ukrainian attacks are. Like, you're not hitting Lviv for a specific logistical purpose. You're doing it to terrorize the Ukrainian people that felt like there was already a return to normalcy, right? Well, not a complete return to normalcy, but like life had started. People in Ukraine and Western territories that are no longer occupied were already like living their lives again. And as a matter of fact, would, from as far as I understand, didn't even go to bomb shelters whenever air raid sirens were happening, because that's how commonplace it had become. This was surprising in the sense that like these were actual bombs that flew over and ended up killing civilians. And for that reason, now they're back to being afraid. And that is the purpose. It's a disruption of the day-to-day experience of Ukrainian lives. And it's also to strike fear in their hearts. And to make the war as costly as possible. It is terrorism. You know?
Last night said Putin could end this war right now. He could argue to the Russian people that he set out what he intended to and bring Russian soldiers home. But Robin, based on what we are seeing on the ground right now, it is clear Putin's strategy for now is to double down and escalate.
It does seem to be the case. And Mary, President Biden also said that he has no plans to meet with Putin during the upcoming summit unless it's about the release of Brittany Griner.
Yeah, Robin, the president said right now he has no intention of meeting with Vladimir Putin at the summit next month. Biden making it very clear that there will be no one-on-one negotiation about Ukraine, saying the allied leaders have agreed there'll be no discussion of Ukraine without Ukraine present. But Biden said if Putin wants to discuss other issues like the release of WNBA star Brittany Griner, well, Biden says he's willing to meet with him.
All right.
Robin.
Okay, Mary, thanks so much.
Hi, everyone.
No one gave a single shit about that attack. We grew too accustomed to this for their terror to work. I mean, it's still terrorism, though. You know what I mean? You can say you grew accustomed to it, which is really fucked up that you have to endure that trauma, right, in your everyday existence. But it still disrupts people's lives, right? Especially when the targets were the electrical grid and the power grid in general. So for that reason, you know, there's still areas that have had no power for the past fucking 3 days. Right? Didn't we bomb pretty indiscriminately during Operation Shock and Awe? Yes, it was really fucked up. It was really fucking brutal, which is precisely why I always say, like, what Vladimir Putin is doing is American playbook shit. And when I say that, I mean that as a negative. For those of you who don't understand, I consider that to be awful, the worst thing you can do. You know? What summit is the next month they're talking about? I'm not entirely certain. I mean, it's bad, but we definitely don't achieve whatever they want with those attacks, especially from that Ukraine has more air defense. Okay, guys, stop mentioning every time one person raids, please. It's going to be annoying. G20 summit. Ukraine also bombed in Russian Belgorod today, it seems. Am I wrong for thinking Ukraine killing civilians isn't good either? Of course you're not wrong for that. If you are anti-war, you're anti-war across the board. Like I have my, like, people.
Thank you so much for.
People in this community and people across the board are claiming that the Crimean Bridge bombing, which was a suicide attack, right? Like, which was a suicide bombing, is completely valid. It's a completely valid target. It's Russian occupied territory. Like, they should be able to do that. But I don't consider that to be an appropriate target either. And I understand why that is not considered an appropriate target. If that's an appropriate target, why aren't they bombing railroads and why aren't they bombing, why aren't they doing what Russia is doing to Ukraine and trying to use fucking long range missile systems or any kind of fucking bombing with deep inside of Russian territory? It is a bridge, I know. Now, Russian escalation is going to happen regardless. Russian escalation is going to happen regardless, and this is not both siding. This is not a both sides situation. One side is overwhelmingly bad. That side is Russia. Okay? There is no both sides in the situation. Russia has been bad, has been the bad actor in this circumstance from the jump. The moment that they invaded, from the moment that they invaded all the way to now, and even when they are trying to do the eye for an eye as a propaganda point internally, even when they're trying to claim that it's an eye for an eye, their tactics are completely escalating it even further because they're the original instigators in this circumstance. They originally escalated by invading. So there is no both sides in that circumstance. Anyway, let's take a look at the CNN exclusive, the Jake Tapper one-on-one, where Biden addresses Putin's nuclear threats in Ukraine.
For doing this, sir. Appreciate it.
Happy to.
So for people at home who don't know, this is the map room. During World War II, this is where it was basically the situation room for FDR. He would look at sensitive information. And now we're at a period where there's another high-stakes war in Europe. You recently said that this is the first time since the Cuban Missile Crisis that there's a legitimate possibility of someone using a nuclear weapon, which could lead to Armageddon. That's the word you used. How realistic is it, do you think, that Putin would use a tactical nuclear weapon?
Well, I don't think he will, but I think it's irresponsible of him to talk about it. The idea that a world leader of one of the largest nuclear powers in the world says he may use a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine, and the whole point I was making was it could lead to just a horrible outcome. And not because anybody intends to turn it into a world war or anything, but it just, once you use a nuclear weapon, the mistakes that can be made, the miscalculations, who knows what would happen.
What is the red line for the United States and NATO, and have you directed the Pentagon and other agencies to game out what a response would be if he did use a tactical nuclear weapon, or if he bombed the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine, or anything along those lines?
There's been discussions on that, but I'm not going to get into that. It would be irresponsible of me to talk about what we would or wouldn't do.
Have you asked the Pentagon to game it out, though? I mean, just in case?
The Pentagon didn't have to be asked.
So French President Macron told me that he doesn't think that Putin is acting rationally. And he said that he thinks a lot of this is because of how isolated Putin was for 2 years during the pandemic. And others who have dealt with him, Condi Rice and Bob Gates and James Clapper, have used words like erratic and unhinged to describe Putin's behavior today. Do you think Putin is a rational actor?
I think he is a rational actor who's miscalculated significantly. I think he thought, you may recall, I pointed out that they were going to invade, that those 100,000 or more troops there, and no one believed that he was going to invade Ukraine. You listen to what he says. If you listen to the speech he made after, when that decision was being made, he talked about the whole idea of he was needed to be the leader of Russia that united all the Russian speakers. I mean, I just think it's irrational.
So if he's not rational and
no, I didn't say he's not rational.
You said the speech is what
I think the speech is
okay.
His objectives were not right. I think he thought, Jake, I think he thought he was going to be welcomed with open arms. That this has been the home of Mother Russia in Kyiv, and he was going to be welcomed. And I think he just totally miscalculated.
So you talked about this.
God damn. He said, I think he thought, little bro thought he was America. You are not him, dude. Brandon saying, you are not him. We will be greeted as liberators is what he thought was going to happen. Except, you know, when America runs that fucking line, okay, and does what it wants to do, wherever the fuck it wants to do it, all around the world, is still America. Okay, not only are they a nuclear superpower, but they're also a dominating hegemonic force on the entire planet. So it doesn't matter if they're not welcomed as liberators or not. It is wild, though. I don't necessarily disagree with what Biden is saying. I mean, I don't think that like Putin legitimately thought he was going to be welcomed as a fucking liberator. I think it's the same as America. He just thought he didn't give a shit. The part that he actually overextended on was the might of his conventional military forces. I think that and how much support Ukraine had gotten from NATO and how much more powerful its standing army was with respect to like what it looked like in 2014. I think that's what it is. I think that he literally thought he could roll over. I think he thought that he could take down important infrastructure and also their air defenses in a matter of like 2 to 3 days. And he thought he could roll it. He could roll up his forces all the way into fucking Kyiv immediately. Then he got his shit pushed in, had to consolidate the forces back into the Eastern Front, and engage in trench warfare on the Eastern Front. Go back to like a war that they are used to fighting, and their forces were hard to resupply. Their supply lines were already disrupted from the jump. Like it was a very difficult task. So difficult that even dumbass American himbo Twitch streamers mentioned that overtaking the entirety of Ukraine will be impossible. Occupying it will be impossible over an extended period of time. And it will be a civilization-ending conflict. Which is why another dumbass Twitch himbo who also agrees with Biden in this circumstance thought Putin is bad, but he's not mad. Famously, that's what he said, whoever that guy was. But turns out, you know, he is both bad and mad. A mad lad. He was mad because bad. What is this? Oh, Verdict Watch, Alex Jones defamation trial. Yeah, we'll cover this when it actually comes to fruition, when it ends. I think there's a good slab of ego in what he did as well. Likely wants to be remembered as a guy that made Russia bigger. I think like when he was also get why he wanted to strike Ukraine though. NATO knocking on his door, the bear bag in no corner. That part is fine, but ultimately it's not like you can make a risk assessment. Okay, you can make a risk assessment and then not act out in the worst way possible. Because if your goal is to undermine the influence of NATO, you did the absolute worst thing possible. Now you got Finland and Sweden. You know what I mean? Now you got everybody thinking, well, you don't even have a good enough conventional military force, so fuck the neutrality, the unspoken neutrality agreements that we had. We're just going to fucking join NATO. We're going to justify NATO's existence. Like, if your goal is to literally say, I want to undermine the influence of NATO at my doorstep inside of Ukraine, then invading Ukraine is the absolute worst, dumbest thing you could have done. Continuing to embolden, or rather continuing to strengthen your trade relationships with Europe would have been the adequate thing to do. It was such a appropriate thing to do that America fucking hated it. America hated the Nord Stream pipeline. Nord Stream 2 was something that America certainly did not want completed. And your European allies at that point were your trade partners, and they still wanted it. They wanted cheap energy. And you fucked it all up. Like, I already have a moral opposition to this kind of bloodshed, okay, across the board. I'm anti-war. I recognize that every side loses in conflicts like this. Especially the working class loses in conflicts like this, where they're either being forcibly drafted to go fight a war that nobody wants to fucking fight in, right? Or they're being invaded and getting bombed non-fucking stop, or even losing energy for 3 fucking days. Right? It was just a major fuck up across the board. Denazification was an idiotic fucking propaganda point to justify your actions. And I say this as someone who has always, even way, way before the invasion of Ukraine, have talked about the Azov Battalion and America funding and training the Azov Battalion and Nazis and whatnot. It still does not justify full-scale military invasion of Ukraine, a position that I've held on to from the jump. Like, no part of Putin's stated goals were achieved with his actions. So it was fucking idiotic. If you don't want to galvanize and embolden Nazis, don't invade the fucking country. Because the one group of people that will be legitimized in their existence will be the most outwardly violent reactionary fascists. They will be the genuine emancipators. Their cause will be seen as just. All you will do is make more reactionary people. This is something that America has done over the course of the past 2 decades with its war on terror. I know this as an American citizen who has been covering the war on terror and the war in the Middle East for many, many years. So if your goal is denazification, congratulations, you emboldened and galvanized and strengthened Nazis, okay? Because just like what happened with the Taliban, for as many members of the Taliban as you kill, you're killing a bunch of cousins, you're killing a bunch of family members, you're creating new members of the Taliban. And the same goes for Azov and other like-minded reactionary forces that are now going to be institutionalized permanently within Ukrainian politics. You're going to strengthen NATO's influence because now everyone's like, okay, well, NATO does have a point. Also, if you care about denazification, I mean, there's like literally nationalist, hyper-nationalist, ultra-nationalist forces that Putin is using as well. So there's that too. Kind of interesting. Although an insurgency type situation didn't end up playing out, I do wonder if some Zelensky hardline stuff is because he's terrified of losing ground to the Ukrainian far right. We just don't have a clear picture of what's playing out in Ukraine. Russia is even worse, though. Yeah, but also on top of that, I think that Zelensky is more beholden to whatever the Western partners want out of Ukraine more than his like domestic politics and his fears of right-wing forces within the country overtaking him eventually. So there's that too. But let's get back to Brandon and what he has to say.
A few days ago, the search for an off-ramp for him, because his back is against the wall. There are questions about how rational he is. He already was a brutal dictator. What is the off-ramp? Is there any acceptable way that he can leave, in his mind, without seizing territory in a way that would not be acceptable to Ukraine?
I don't know what's in his mind, but clearly he could leave. He could just flat leave and still probably hold his position together in Russia. The idea that he's been able to convince a significant the Russian people that this is something that he thought made sense, but now he's accomplished what he wanted to do, and it's time to bring Russians home.
Would you be willing to meet with him at the G20?
Look, I have no intention of meeting with him, but for example, if he came to me at the G20 and said, I want to talk about the release of Griner, I'd meet with him. I mean, it would depend, but I can't imagine. Look, we've taken a position. I just did a G7 meeting this morning. The idea, nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. So I'm not about to, nor is anyone else prepared to negotiate with Russia about them staying in Ukraine, keeping any part of Ukraine, et cetera. So it would depend on specifically what he wanted to talk about. But look, he's acted brutally. I think he's committed war crimes. So I don't.
And let me tell you, Jack, I know all about war crimes, so I'm the best guy to call it out.
I don't see any rationale to meet with him now.
When people hear the word Armageddon,
The notion that like we don't negotiate with terrorists when you're talking about a state actor on top of it, which by the way is a silly one, especially when you are the United States of America, obviously. But let's not even get into that. But ultimately, like talking to a state actor about the release or a prisoner swap for Brittany Griner, he's open to that, but he's not open to like giving Russia an off ramp in this. Giving Russia an off-ramp or even like trying to fucking put forward an olive branch as a mediator and just expecting Russia to continue bombing the living shit out of Ukraine and, civilian territories within Ukraine or even potentially waiting for further escalations, whether it be chemical weapons or whether it be fucking nuclear weapons, God forbid, is a little terrifying as far as prospects goes. Now, he will mask that. He will shroud that by saying, well, we're not going to have a conversation with Putin without Ukraine at the table, which is, of course, understandable. But the reality in this circumstance is that Ukraine's needs and Ukraine's wants, while legitimate, are still completely beholden to what America is willing to give. Okay? Because obviously without NATO involvement, Ukraine would have looked a lot like Ukraine in 2014. It would have looked a lot like that. A standing military that is completely, wholly incapable of defending themselves against Russia's conventional forces even.
they get scared from used by a U.S. president. They get scared. Do you think in any way discussing this type of thing publicly, openly, Putin's possible use of nuclear weapons, might have the opposite effect of what you want? It might make some of our wobblier European allies be even more scared of confronting Putin.
Well, no, I don't think so at all. I think, look,
when you say it's not 2014 anymore and Ukraine is different now, yeah, it's not 2014 anymore because of NATO involvement, though. You recognize that, right? That's backed by America. America is offering both small arms and also missile systems to Ukraine currently. And without that kind of support, Ukraine would not be able to defend itself from Russia in any meaningful capacity. I fear that what must be done in every single part of this was trying to avoid further escalation. America itself is also considered further escalation to be to go too far at certain points, which is why they released that New York Times article openly condemning Ukrainian special forces, claiming that Ukrainian special forces were responsible for the terror attack against Dugin that ended up killing Dugin's daughter, right? There's no reason for them to come out and just fucking come out and say, like, that's wrong, that's fucked up that you guys did that, right? I know we will do it. We will do the Alex Jones verdict, but I'm talking about something different right now. Can we get to that in a second? I think it's a very concise video talking about what's happening in Ukraine. Talks about nukes, weapons, donations, NATO, and the Nord Stream pipeline. You could juice the fuck out of this. No, I'm not going to fucking cover this random video that you want me to cover about this channel. My take is just like 25 minutes. I'm not going to do that right now, man. I don't know what happened. Did someone in my Discord watch this and they want me to fucking gas this up or something? Stop. You guys keep like a lot of like long-term community members are just like pumping this video for some reason. It's so weird. Wait, what? When chatter suggests videos, because I'm in the middle of commentary on something that's different.
Directed, when I'm talking to Putin. He, in fact, cannot continue with impunity to talk about the use of a tactical nuclear weapon as if that's a rational thing to do. The mistakes get made. And the miscalculation could occur. No one can be sure what would happen, and it could end in Armageddon.
And you still are.
Hasan, you really hate your viewers, don't you, lol? Yeah, famously. I'm a hater of my viewers. Obviously, that's the reason why I overstream by many, many hours every day. It's typical of me to do that. I don't think anybody believes that, but... You know. Sorry,
are afraid of that, though, that it could.
Well, no, I don't think any rational person saying the initial use of of a nuclear weapon, killing thousands of people, does not have the prospect of leading to something that can be way out of control.
Let's turn to Saudi Arabia. Some of your Democratic allies on Capitol Hill are afraid that the U.S. got played when you went to Saudi Arabia and fist bumped with the Crown Prince, because now, obviously, a few months later, Saudi-backed OPEC is slashing oil production in partnership with Russia. The chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Menendez, just called for a freeze on cooperation with Saudi Arabia, including most arms sales. Senator Durbin, the #2 Democrat in the Senate, says the Saudis sided with Russia against the United States. Do you think it's time for the U.S. to rethink its relationship with Saudi Arabia?
Yes, and by the way, let's get straight why I went. I didn't go to one about oil. I went about making sure that we weren't.
Okay, breaking news. Alex Jones is getting fucking absolutely fisted by the legal system, for the record. I'm just going to briefly mention it before we get further into it, but the Sandy Hook jury verdict is in for Alex Jones' InfoWars trial in Connecticut, and it's looking enormous. One plaintiff alone is getting $120 million. $120 million. Okay, pack watch for Alex Jones. We will cover all that in a little bit, though. I just wanted to briefly step in and mention that. But let's continue with this.
We're going to walk away from the Middle East and what was going on. And by the way, today I just got off the telephone with the president I got off the phone with the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of Lebanon. They've worked out a deal. They've been at war, declared war with one another for a long time. They've worked out a boundary relationship along in the Eastern Mediterranean for oil. And they're going to make an agreement that is historic. We also got overflights for Israeli planes over Saudi Arabia. We got movement in terms of how we would deal in the Middle East with aggression from Iran. But it wasn't, there were eight other parties there. It wasn't about oil.
Okay, but
But we should, and I am in the process when the House and Senate gets back. They're going to have to. There's going to be some consequences for what they've done with Russia.
What kind of consequences? Menendez says suspend all arms sales. Is that something you'd consider?
I'm not going to get into what I'd consider and what I have in mind, but there will be consequences.
The midterm elections are 4 weeks from today. The economy remains top of mind for voters. JP Morgan Chase CEO said the U.S. is likely to enter a recession in the next 9 months. Bank of America says the U.S. could start losing 175,000 jobs a month. Gas prices are on the rise again. Should the American people prepare for a recession?
No. Look, they've been saying this now. Every 6 months they say this. Every 6 months they look down the next 6 months and see what's going to happen. It hadn't happened yet. It hadn't. There's no guarantee that they're going to be. I don't think there will be a recession. If it is, it'll be a very slight recession. That is, we'll move down slightly. Look, think about what's happened. We have done more. We're in a better position than any other major country in the world, economically and politically. We still have real problems, but look what we got done. We passed so much legislation that significantly makes a point about, for example, the American Rescue Plan, the legislation to deal with inflation, the Inflation Act. We moved along. I mean, there's so much that's been accomplished that the idea that there's an automaticity to recession is just not there. They've been predicting this off and on for the last.
But you just said that a slight recession is possible.
It is possible. Look, it's possible. I don't anticipate it. What I do think, look, we talk about the impact on families. The families they have reason to be concerned about energy prices. They have reason to be concerned about a whole range of issues. But look what we've done. We've been able to, the Inflation Reduction Act. There's more, look, I know I always quoted my dad, but my dad used to say, what is there any breathing room for a middle-class family? And the breathing room is after all the bills are paid at the end of the month, they have anything left. And there's more than one way to bring down the monthly cost for people who in fact are struggling, to make sure they have the ends meet and they have enough money. And that's what we've done with the Inflation Reduction Act. Look, we've reduced drug prices. We've allowed, for the first time, we've been trying for years to get.
I mean, that's wild. Hey man, look, listen, Jack. We like shaved a piece in the next 5 years off of insulin for Medicare recipients. Okay. I mean, that's good, but like, that's crazy to use that as a reason as to why like people are not going to be struggling when at a time when they are. On 10 drugs, yeah. And it's not even happening yet. Like that's crazy. Now, I am of the mindset that I think not everything that's happening currently is directly the responsibility of Joe Biden. Just like I've said in the past that, the good economy or whatever the fuck people thought was directly the responsibility of Donald Trump. Okay. The economy doesn't move as fast as the politicians do or political movements do, obviously. Having said that, however, there are things that you can do to set up for a better future. And even if you are making baby steps towards it, saying that like things will be good in the interim period, well, it's wrong. Did you say politicians move fast? I said political movements happen faster than you can understand its impact on the economy.
Medicare to be able to negotiate drug prices. We pay the highest drug prices of any nation in the world, any major nation. We're going to be in a situation where no senior is going to have to pay more than $2,000 a year for the drugs, no matter how much they cost.
Crazy how you're doing damage control for Joe. Well, I think you're not understanding the words I'm saying. I think in spite of everything, in spite of my opinion on like the current president not being directly responsible for the economy, which is like often a stupid thing that people believe. I think Biden, in the way that he's using this opportunity in the interview, is functionally lying about his involvement in fixing everything. Insanely dangerous rhetoric saying that a recession will not happen when it seems like the global economy is going to tank 8% to 10%. Millions are going to die. What he's trying to do here is save his ass. And save his party's ass right before the midterms. That's it. That's all he's doing.
We've reduced the price. They're going to make sure that nobody has to pay more than $35 a month for insulin, et cetera. So there's so much to be done. And the same with on energy. We passed look, what I ran on, I said we're going to deal with energy.
Right.
And the energy problem, we're going to deal with the whole notion of global warming. We passed $368 billion worth of help, which, as the same bankers talk about, is going to bring $1.7 billion off the sidelines in investment. Look what's happened. Look at the investment that's going on in America right now.
Yeah. So you think Democrats have something to run on?
Oh, I think we do. I know we do. And here's the contrast. We know what's the Republican platform to run on? What are they running on? What are they for? They want to put Social Security on the chopping block every 5 years, and the other leader comes along and says, no, every year it should be up for grabs. Medicare, Medicaid. I mean, these aren't negotiable items in terms of whether they're going to continue them or not. The first thing they said they're going to do is get rid of the Inflation Reduction Act. And so what's that do? They're going to raise drug prices, raise medical costs again, be sure that we're going to no longer be able to have the ability to have tax credits for weatherizing your home, saving money. I mean, I don't know what they're for.
Our reporting, CNN's reporting, and the Washington Post reporting suggests that prosecutors think they have enough to charge your son Hunter for tax crimes and a
This part was interesting. Let's see what he has to say.
false statement about a gun purchase. Personally and politically, how do you react to that?
Well, first of all, I'm proud of my son. This is a kid who got, not a kid, he's a grown man. He got hooked on, like many families have had happen, hooked on drugs. He's overcome that. He's established a new life. He is, I'm confident that he is, what he says and does are consistent with what happens. For example, he wrote a book about his problems and was straightforward about it. I'm proud of him. He came along and said, by the way, this thing about a gun, I didn't know anything about it, but turns out that when he made my application to purchase a gun, what happened was I guess you get asked, you get asked the question, are you on drugs, you use drugs? He said no. And he wrote about saying no in his book. So I have great confidence in my son. I love him, and he's on the straight and narrow, and he has been for a couple of years now, and I'm just so proud of him.
You're about to turn 80 next month. Happy birthday ahead of time. Whenever anyone raises concerns about your age, you're the oldest president in the history of the United States, you always say, watch me. Voters have been watching you. Democratic voters approve of the job you're doing. Democratic voters overwhelmingly like you. But one poll shows that almost 2/3 of Democrats.
This dummy literally fucking self-snitched on his book, bro. That's crazy. I mean, that's like fail son to the max. You know what I mean? That's fail son behavior to the absolute maximum at that point. Right-wing Second Amendment defenders for Hunter? No, dude, nobody cares. Nobody cares about any fucking genuine principles. That's not a real thing. Come on. At this point, like, you see a fraction of that whenever, like, some dudes who literally are defending Hitler on the timeline talk about, like, my microaggressions or whatever, okay? At a certain point, you got to realize, like, no one actually maintains a legitimate position. Like, it extends in the exact same way. You see a microcosm of that, and it extends all the way out to fucking politics as well, opposition research. Nobody cares about anything.
Democratic voters want a new nominee in 2024, and the top reason they gave was your age. So what's your message to Democrats who like you, who like what you've done, but are concerned about your age and the demands of the job?
Well, they're concerned about whether or not I can get anything done. Look what I've gotten done. Name me a president in recent history that's gotten as much done as I have in the first 2 years. Not a joke. You may not like what I got done, but the vast majority of the American people do like what I got done. And so it's a matter of, can you do the job? And I believe I can do the job. I've been able to do the job. I've got more done. I got the Inflation Reduction. I got all these pieces of legislation passed. And I ran on that. I said this is what I was going to do. And I'm still getting it done. We've got, dealing with, making sure that veterans get compensated for the
burn pits.
The burn pits, making sure.
Jake Tapper's doing such a good job with this interview that he's literally completing Brandon's sentences, dude. Love that. Yeah, burn pits, right, President? Yeah, the Inflation Reduction Act, right, Mr. President? Right? Remember that one? Mr. President, do you remember when you did student loan debt relief, Mr. President? Remember that? That was sick. And the reality is, like, here, I'll put on my fucking, honesty hat. Some will call me a lib for this. But as far as, if you look at it from the point of view of, like, inaction being the permanent status for the Democratic Party, yes, Joe Brandon has done a significant amount, okay, in comparison to in comparison to what the Democratic Party's modus operandi is. If you look at it like that, then yeah, he has done some things. It's always a starting point and never the actual meat, though. A perfect example of this is like unilaterally, declaring possession charges to be null and void and releasing 6,500 or even more, especially when you factor in D.C., people from federal prison for marijuana possession charges. Like, that's impactful, okay? But it's quite literally the starting point, okay? It is the starting point. The conversation, the nobody got released yet. I'm just saying it's the conversation starting point. It is the bare minimum, okay? Because the overwhelming majority of people are still locked in state charges in state prison, okay? None of them were in prison. It's expunging the records. Oh, yeah, I mean, well, that certainly, because it's such a minor charge. Every single thing that Brandon has done so far, from the Inflation Reduction Act to the bipartisan budget reconciliation bill that passed, that was an infrastructure bill, to the student loan debt relief, it is always the entry point. Like, you come in with adequate measures that you want to put forward, and then you end up conceding before you even get to the bargaining table with the Republican Party. You concede, you self-cuck, okay? And then you basically push through like a neutered, way less effective bill. And then you want it then you want to celebrate it as though it's the same dub that you claimed you were going to get. So we'll see.
Sure that we're in a situation where we finally have action on guns. And by the way, I'm going to get an assault weapons ban. Before this is over, I'm going to get that again. Not a joke. And watch. And so I just think there's it's a matter of, has anybody done more in the first 2 years of their administration for a guy they've been saying this about my age since I began to run. Mm-hmm. And so, you can come work out with me in the morning.
Anytime. The big question, of course, is when you're going to make an official announcement about whether or not you're going to run for 2024 for re-election. Do you think you'll make a decision before the end of the year?
Well, look, I'm not going to make this about my decision. I'm going to make this about this off-year election. After that's done in November, then I'm going to be in the process of deciding.
Is one of the calculations that you think you're the only one who can beat Donald Trump?
I believe I can beat Donald.
Oh my God. It's the same. They're gearing up for the same talking points for the 85-year-old man to run again. Is that your calculation, Mr. President? That you are the only man to stop Donald Trump? We already ran this. God damn. I mean, why? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? For the media, they literally are looking at this like, hey, listen, he's the only one. He's the only one. Ay, ay, ay. He will be 86 at the end of his term if he wins again. No, he's going to be 80 now. He's got 82, but he will be. God damn, dude. It's just so grim. American politics is so grim. It's so bad. The media is so morally bankrupt. Oh, by the end of his second term. Yeah. I was talking about when he's running. And the unfortunate reality, no matter what we say, the unfortunate reality is, no matter what we fucking say, there is still the truth that at the top of the hour, there's a 6-second ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe, which you could do for $5 or for free. Okay? No matter what Brandon says. That's right. It's true. You can also get gifted a sub if you're lucky. Trinrec, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Here's the 1 minute ad break now. So what I was saying, all jokes aside, no matter what he says, no matter what we say, no matter what we get upset at, with respect to the feckless, ineffective attitude of the Democratic Party, the alternative is still the Republican Party, which they know and they're banking on. And the Republican Party, as we know it, already when they do get into a position of power, never hold back and go balls to the fucking wall, do everything they can to undermine legislative power, so that they can stack the courts and take everything up to the Supreme Court and basically gut all institutional control and run the country into the fucking ground. And that is precisely what we saw. There's a reason why even under Joe Biden, the liberties, the civil liberties, and the autonomy of women was set back, especially in red states, set back to a point before Roe v. Wade existed. That happened under the Biden administration. Erkin Y, thank you for the 20 gifted subs. How the fuck did that happen? Well, that happened because Donald Trump and the Republican Party, the machine, was able to take away, one, they were able to destroy any sort of legislative power, right? With their obstructionist policies, they're able to completely undermine any kind of legislative power the Democratic Party has when they even own both the House of Representatives and the Senate and the White House. 2, they were able to set the courts up. They were able to pad the decks with their numbers through by way of the Federalist Society and have a pretty much permanent supermajority in the Supreme Court, barring any sort of like externalities that you can't factor in, like an untimely death or something. You know what I mean? They now have a in the short term and maybe even in the long term, a permanent supermajority of conservative Supreme Court justices. And there's pretty much nothing you can do in this situation if you're not going to focus on building labor power and creating a mechanism of accountability and a mechanism of pushback that genuinely wants to do what's best for the people. And it doesn't seem like the Democratic Party is actually interested in that. So That is the underlying reality, no matter what happens.
Donald Trump again.
All right, Mr. President, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I know you're rooting for the Phillies.
That's a fact. If I weren't, I'd be sleeping alone. I married a Philly girl.
Yeah.
So we talked about Biden, Brandon, Putin's nuclear stuff, but before we continue with Brandon and the Hunter Biden stuff, which is going to make which is going to make shockwaves, let's get to Pack Watch Alex Jones edition, and let's celebrate for a brief moment in the sea of like awful news. Breaking news: absolutely astronomical figures in this InfoWars lawsuit out